Okay, I think we are finally up. Okay, perfect. Facebook changed some of the things on the background, and I was having trouble getting it started for a second. So, hi everyone. We should be live and good to go now. Thanks for dealing with some of the technical difficulties as platforms are always changing how things are hosted and where and what buttons you click. So, I think I've got it all right now. Let me move some things around on my screen. So this is my first time I am both in my Facebook group as well as doing an Instagram live. So I'm kind of also bouncing back and forth in between two screens, two cameras here. So excited that you all are either here live or catching a recording of this. I am Amanda. I talk a lot with other therapists about how to add therapy intensives to their practice as a way to add in any it's kind of an additional stream of income that you don't have to build a whole new business for, which I think is really amazing. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what therapy intensives are, if you have not heard of them before, if you have kind of thought about them, but there's some technical pieces you're not sure about how to adapt. Like one of the questions I most frequently get asked is this a thing you can really only do in person? Or if I'm a virtual provider, can I do this virtually? So that's what I'm here to talk about today is how do we take these extended therapy sessions and translate them into the virtual environment? Because yes, you absolutely can do these intensives virtually. So to back up for a second, a lot of people have asked what even is a therapy intensive? What does it look like? Can it only be in a group format? Does it have to be like a workshop? Is it psychoeducational? What are all the different formats? So when I'm talking about a therapy intensive, I'm basically talking about an extended therapy session. And so that can mean really anything. Like a lot of us are kind of trained in the traditional 45, 50, even 60-minute therapy session model. A lot of that is influenced by the insurance model of therapy and what's reimbursed and all that good stuff. But for a therapy intensive, how often have you felt super stuck with, I, I don't know what to do here. We only have 2 minutes left. We have to start wrapping up. If you do any kind of deeper techniques like EMDR, brain spotting, ART, even couples methods like EFT, and stuff like that, you might notice feeling like there's never enough time. And so a therapy intensive is basically just an extended therapy session. So this could be anywhere from 80 to 90 minutes to multiple hours in one day to multiple hours across multiple days. So there's lots of different ways that an intensive can look, but just to be on the same page about that, that's what I'm talking about is basically just an extended therapy session is what a therapy intensive is. So when you're thinking about, is this something that you want to do? How would this look for you? Again, number one, this is not the number one question, but again, the number one thing I'm talking about today is, do I do in person? Do I do office? Do I do any kind of hybrid model? So first and foremost, when it comes to therapy intensives, I am always encouraging people, do what works for you, right? If it doesn't work for you, that's not good. So don't do anything just because you see other people doing them and you think that's what's going to work. That's how it's supposed to look. So for example, as I was just saying, these can be 80 or 90-minute sessions, or they could be multiple hours over multiple days. If you're heck no, do I ever want to be with one client for multiple hours for multiple days? Totally fine, right? You don't even have to do a 90-minute session. You don't have to do 3-hour sessions. What is your capacity? What's your preference? What does your schedule even look like? And how do you want to make these work in your practice? So number one is definitely a thing to think about is what intensives are going to look like for you in your practice. And so when it comes to your in-person intensives, your online intensives, if you're doing kind of a hybrid model, either with one intensive or you offer some in person and some online, that's what I do is I will do some intensives online. I will do some intensives in person. So you absolutely can make it work. Some of the things that you'll want to think about when it comes to what are the differences, how do I adapt those different things, are again that timing of the session. So for example, Maybe in person, you can feel like I can go for 3, 4 hours, maybe even 5 hours. Obviously, take like bio breaks, take breaks to like breathe, get water, get a snack, stuff like that. But in person, you might feel a little bit of a different energy. That's not necessarily the case. Some people might notice that. Whereas when you're in front of the computer, you're in like, I'm in a computer chair, it's comfortable enough, but it's not like a nice armchair. Literally, your comfort level, your attention span, your eye strain might mean you're not as excited to be in front of the screen for as long. So, even the timing of what do intensives look like when I'm doing it virtually on screen versus in person, I've got a client or a couple next to me, that's one thing to be thinking about. So you can consider what is your max per kind of like modality. If you feel like, if it's on screen, I might want to stick to like 90-minute intensives. Great, do what works for you. If you're, I'll say personally, I've done 3 to 4 hour intensives online. I haven't had a problem. I still generally find intensives very energizing. And so I do start to notice typically at like the 3.5 to 4 hour mark, I start to get pretty tired anyway. So nowadays I usually am just offering like a max of 3 hours at a time. So again, this is all about number one, your capacity, your attention span, things like that, as well as just does it vary for you depending on if it's in person or online. So that's one thing to think about. For those of you who are doing, my model of intensives is more like intensive packages. So there are some clients I will see routinely for 90 minutes or 2 hours. There are some clients where they are entirely new to me and my practice. And so I'm working with them in more of like a package model. And by that, what I mean is I do an intake with them because they're new to me. I want to get a sense of what's going on. What are you seeking this type of support for? What are your goals? What are we working on? We do the intensive processing session, and then we have like a follow-up after that. So if you follow more of like a package model for new clients, then what you might see is when it comes to putting those online, it might make sense to chunk it out a little bit differently. Some people in the package model will do like intake, intensive session, kind of integrative wrap up session on the same day of like morning, late afternoon. But online, that would be a lot of hours in one day. So you might consider, is the intake the day before online? Is the intake a week before online? Is the follow-up the next day, a week later, whatever that might be? So that might just be some of the things that you think about tweaking when it comes to thinking about being online. So for example, when I'm doing my most booked intensive is 2 days of 3 hours each day. And so what I'll do is have an intake session. Usually I'll hold those on like a Monday or a Tuesday. That's 60 to 90 minutes. And then I'll move into the intensive processing sessions. Most people's schedules, they want to do them like a Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, or something like that. So we've gotten a chance to break from the screen for quite a bit. I've gotten a chance to really hear about and integrate. Here's what they're wanting to focus on. I've prepared them for this is what brain spotting looks like online. This is what EMDR looks like online. So I can prep them for a little bit of some of the subtleties that are going to be different, especially if there's any tools that you use and whether they're an online tool. I always find it helpful to kind of get that out of the way, get the client set up with what that's going to look like. Like I use easy EMDR. A lot of you might use remote EMDR. So I'll, in the intake session, go over with the client, like, okay, you're going to pull this up on your screen. Here's what we're going to set up. We're going to do all of that because I'm not in the office to do that with them. So that's how I've navigated that before. So timing of the session, are there any tools or resources that people need to have near them? That will want to be something you are preparing your client for in that sense when you're building up to that intensive session. And then again, this kind of fits into the timing piece, but you want to think about breaks that you'll have in the sessions. Again, I've done 3 hours straight back to back, both in person and online with people, and have had no problem. Some clients, depending on their brain, their processing, their nervous system, your brain, your processing, your nervous system. Some people have made it intentionally, like we are going to meet for 90 minutes. We're going to take a 10 or 15-minute break. We'll come back and do another 90-minute session. So you can choose to either make that as a part of your practice, or I at least kind of just give options of like, we have 3 hours. I booked off in my schedule 3.5 hours. If we want to take a break in that time, we have time to do that. If we just push right through and we wrap up at 3 hours, then perfect. So you'll want to think about, again, just how you want to build in breaks. Do you want to be more structured with that? Do you want to be more flexible with that? Because again, part of what you want to think about is the comfort of you and your client. Like I said, I, for example, have a comfortable enough computer chair. That's the word. I lost it for a second. I have had some clients who have said things like, I'm just going to sit on the floor for 3 hours. I'm like, you are probably going to be uncomfortable if you sit on the floor for 3 hours, but we can definitely start you on the floor. And if you need to move at all, like that's when we could take a break from processing and kind of move around if needed. So you want to think about just like comfort of the environment. Obviously, if it's your office, you have a lot more say over that, a lot more control over that in terms of where a client is sitting on a more comfortable couch or like a floor pillow or things like that. In their home environment, you might just want to be talking with them around how are they going to ensure their comfort, because we know that we need to be comfortable in order to process for multiple hours at a time. So comfort levels, again, any resources, any tools, any things that you want them to have ready at home. And that's an important question too, is like the location of the client. I know for some of like weekly sessions, some of my clients are signing on from home or from work, or maybe from the parking lot outside of work. So in the weekly 45 to 60-minute model, location, like it matters, but it maybe doesn't matter as much as it does if you are doing more of these intensive extended sessions. Because in that sense, if a client is committing to 2 hours in the parking lot, like there's a lot of things you just might want to consider there. Ultimately, like, are they comfortable in their environment? Ideally, we want them to be comfortable in their environment. So if they are doing it at home or at work, somewhere where they have access to like closed doors, walls, I guess steel in the sense of a car around them, do they feel like that's enough safety? Do they feel like that's enough comfort? If they are at home, are there going to be other people around at home? What's kind of their support plan in that sense of asking people, you know, can you leave the house for these few hours, or can you actually, I do want you to be in the living room in case like I need to step out of this processing and, you know, have my person nearby. So that can be helpful to think about. Pets are unique in the sense of, you know, some people have pets, some people have literal emotional support animals, some people have pets that, you know, are basically like emotional support. But it can be distracting in the intensive sessions depending on the energy of the pet. So sometimes people have locked the dog, the cat, whatever it is, kind of outside of the room. And sometimes there's a lot of scratching at the door or barking at the door or things like that. So you want to just, again, have them think about all the logistics of, because you're at home, how do we create like a safe enough container for you to do this work, for you to do this processing. So comfort is huge. What environment are they in? And again, like what are some things that you might have in your office in terms of different tools you use, resources you use, even like water, snacks, fidget toys, stuff like that. These are all things that, again, if you have an in-person office, you've already thought about. Clients really like having this. If a client is in their home, they likely will have some of the things, but it's going to be helpful for you to provide them with some guidance around, you know, make sure you have water, make sure you have snacks. If you have fidget toys, bring those to session, have them around, have a blanket, have a pillow, whatever that is. So I find it helpful to have almost like a prep sheet of just like bullet point suggestions of, these are things that can be helpful to have. Make sure you have this, consider this, just so that, again, you're doing things as preparing them as best as possible, so that once they actually get into the intensive processing session, it's not like, oh shoot, I have to get up and like go grab Kleenex. Like obviously that's fine if that happens. It's just beneficial if they have as much ready and kind of set up so that, again, the processing session can be mostly processing and not navigating the logistics of, oh, wait, I didn't have this ready. Oh, wait, I didn't think about that. Things like that. Otherwise, let's see. I've just got a sheet of notes that I'm referring to make sure I talk with you all about all the things I've been thinking about when it comes to the online therapy intensives. And again, either in the Facebook group or on Instagram Live, if you have questions, please feel free to comment and I will answer those live here. But again, when it comes to intensives, generally you do want to be thinking about goal setting of like, what are we working on here? Again, if there is any adaptations you're making because it's on the computer, if you're like, I can really only do 90 minutes at a time, then you'll want to talk with clients about some of the differences between, you know, as you actually start to do intensives, you'll get a better feel for this is typically what we can work through in 90 minutes. Sessions where we have like 3 hours, we can usually get to maybe even like a couple or a few different goals. But you want to make sure that you're just setting those goals, setting those expectations with those clients so that they have a good understanding of what's going on, scheduling those breaks as needed. And I think something that's actually really cool about the virtual intensives is that they can tend to be a lot more flexible. Like some clients think about these like multi-day intensives, even if it's 90 minutes, 3 days a week, that would be a lot harder to kind of establish if they were doing in person. Not impossible, but a little harder. If you're doing 3 90-minute sessions, like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it can be really easy for them to, coordinate like a change of work schedule, or they just know like that's what they're doing on those days and they don't have to do the extra travel. They don't have to do extra hiring of any like childcare support or things like that. So I think there's a lot of ways in which people have found the online intensives to just be really beneficial to their schedule, really flexible with their schedule. And I've also done before, like I've said, not just intensive in-person sessions and intensive online sessions, but with one person, I've done like a mixture of both because maybe they would prefer it on a weekend, but they don't want to make the 2 hour drive down on a weekend. And so we do it virtually. But then if they want to do 2 days back to back, they'll come down in person. So you can also be flexible if you do have more of a hybrid office, you can be flexible with doing that. You can also, when it comes to, you probably do this if you already have a in-person office, but sometimes I know I've felt like, oh, there's this thing on my computer I want to pull up really quickly, or oh, there's a sheet that I want to show them, but now I have to like get on my laptop and scroll and find all of that. Obviously, that's easier when you are online because then you can just pull it up, share screen, look at resources together. I've had a lot of clients who have just really liked the multimedia aspect of that, the fact that we can work through things together. Again, if you're trained in any modalities where there are more like online tools, tools, like again, like I said, easy EMDR is what I use, where it's like a digital ball instead of I don't have to be moving my hand or have a light bar, or I can't give the client tappers. In that sense, they can always get their own, but all those different visual tools, those online resources that you can think about that actually make online intensives much easier than I think a lot of people think. I think the biggest things that people are thinking about is, does it just matter from a time perspective? Do you want to do it a little shorter online? Totally an option. Or not or and thinking about the comfort level of your clients. So you want to think about having them in a comfortable, supportive environment. And again, really just these intensives can work great either way. I have a lot of clients at the point of consultation will ask that question around, is there a difference? Like if we did this online versus in person, have you noticed any difference? And you are all trained in the things that you're trained in. You know what's going to work well for different people. You'll know if there's a difference between how you do things virtually versus how you do things online. Like if you're more of a somatic practitioner, then you might have to ask more questions about, I can only see here and here, like what's going on underneath the desk, what can't I see? So you already know how to like adapt those pieces. So it's the same thing. but I genuinely have done over 40 of these intensive sessions, probably over 50 at this point, and I've done more virtually than I have in person, and I have seen they work just as effectively. I think for a lot of people, because they get to be in their home environment where maybe they do have a pet, they do have a supportive person nearby, they've got their comfort items in terms of favorite blanket, favorite pillow, stuff like that, they tend to actually feel a lot more comfortable at home compared to coming into the office. Everything's kind of new. They don't know where's the bathroom and all this stuff. So I think online therapy intensives work really, really well. I think, again, just choose what works best for you in the sense of don't offer 4 or 5 hours back to back online if you're like, I hate being on the screen longer than 90 minutes at a time. So just choose what works for you, collaborate with your client, and then hopefully all things go just really, really well. But that's about all that I have to say for today. Again, if there are any questions, ask them live for the next like minute or so before I start to wrap up, or you're always free to leave a comment. Again, if you're in the Facebook group, on the Facebook group, if you're on Instagram, send me a DM, leave a comment, anything that you have questions about, and I'm happy to answer that for you. But I'm going to go ahead and start shutting things down. Thank you. I know this was a different time for this week. I normally do these lives on Wednesday, but thought I would switch it up and do it on a Friday today. So hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and I will look forward to seeing you around. Thank you. Bye.